okay, God, just give me a sign that North Carolina is the right thing. Just give me a sign. We're walking, and right up ahead, there were these, in front of these brownstones, and there were bushes, and it was September, a gorgeous September day, and there were 3 men working landscaping. And as we approached, you could see one of them had, he looked like a gypsy. He was bare-chested, he had dark curly hair with a little earring, and he had like a scythe, I think it's called a scythe, and he is like hacking away at the bushes. And as we walk by, he opened up his arms and he started to sing, "Nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina." And I was shaking. And I looked at my husband, who was much taller, that's why I'm looking up, and I said, was that it? He said, "Do you need more of a sign?" I said, "You know, I'm not sure. I need to know, was that the sign?" So we're walking a little further along, and we're waiting at the corner for the light to change. And a truck goes by, and on the side it says North Carolina. That day we booked the flight, we went to a hotel, and we came, and I really have never regretted it. I mean, this was it. But so that's how we get here. So I thought, okay, I've got the animated version of Max. I was thinking, because I was thinking, no, there's not going to be any money in books, and I'm starting so late. I'm starting so late that maybe if I can get it into a novel format, I'll have a shot at either a feature or a film, which was the goal. Here's another first. I'd never done anthropomorphic. I had to look up the word, anthropomorphic, and it grew, it built, and we're writing the novel, and it got done. Okay, now it's done, what are you going to do? I knew Cameron Kent, and I called Cameron. Actually, Rick Amy introduced me to Cameron Kent, and he said, you know, I've got a book that just came out with my publisher in New York. Your book sounds right. Let's, why don't you get in touch with them, use my name, and okay, so that's how that came. The first publisher I contacted about Max, Royal Fireworks Press in New York, she said, we love it, we want to do it. I said, well, you know, it wasn't written for children. It's really, she said, well, let's see how we do it. So it took 5 years for them to get the illustrations. There are 25 line drawings. And the color, you know, you think it's easy when you say he's a purple rabbit. Okay, then they want to know, we get to the point where they're doing the cover, it's going to be in color. What color purple? I'm here, they're up there, the illustrator's in Washington, I never met her. I was sending faxes back and forth in those days, faxes with movies, to pictures of movie stars to show her how to do the faces, and they're there, how to do the faces. So I went to a paint store and I got a bunch of purple color shades and sent that, and we came up with the purple. While I was waiting for that, I had my Sasha, was my dog, and now I have no imagination, so I have to use my own life in disguise. Now people who know me say, oh yeah, you're the rabbit, I can see that. And then there's Morris Bernstein. Before the book though, I was doing stuff for WFDD, for NPR. It wasn't called Max and Friends, it was called The Adventures of Morris Bernstein. And I would go in every morning. I love radio because you always look good on radio.
Yeah, right.
And I had done a lot for the BBC whenever they needed an American. So I'm going to every day, every recording, The Adventures of Morris Bernstein with Diane Behar was the producer then. And We actually got mail. No one gets mail for doing anything on radio. I was doing all the characters, and people thought we had 5 people in the studio. So it was fun. And that was the beginning of Max. So it's never, you know, people think when they see a book, they think, oh, you wrote it last night, and then it's in print today, and it's out. Nobody really knows what happened. So while I was waiting, I said, you know, somebody said to me, you better write another book because it's going to take a long time to get published. I said, oh, okay. So Arthur Miller said, you have to write. No. Yes. No. Ernest Hemingway said, you have to write what is absolutely burning up inside. I had this dog in London that I always felt guilty because I had to leave him. So who did I leave him with? Oh, wait. Sasha, the dog who made it to the palace. That was, and I was writing it as 2 dogs emailing each other. And the end, it's actually a true story, the part of it, not the emailing. But when I left Sasha, I left him with a friend of mine who happened to be the royal florist. So she told me she had Sasha in her little red van, and she was delivering flowers every day to the Queen Mother. And the Queen Mother looked out, and she said, oh, is that your dog? You know, oh, don't leave him in the van, you bring him in, bring him in. So every day, my Sasha went into the palace and sat with the Queen Mother. So in 2000, that would be Sasha. So in 2004, I was in London, and I wrote to the Queen, and I explained, and I'd love to bring you a book. Well, she doesn't write her own letters, so she has her private secretary wrote and said, oh, yes, here's the phone number, use the staff entrance, and come up to the side. I said, oh, wonderful, and just call when you get here and tell us when you want to come. Well, you have to really be abroad to understand how that bus system works. You know, so I hop on the 26 bus and I'm going to the palace on the 26 bus, and I get off and I walk in this you know, staff entrance, the side behind where they come out and go in. Sometimes you see it. And I brought the book in. She didn't come out, but her secretary did, and they all knew I was coming, and everybody, because you have to identify yourself. Oh, she'll read it, she'll read it. And then I got a lovely letter, and we corresponded for a while. Mrs. Bonici, I think her name was. We corresponded for a while, and I often, what did the mailman think? You know, it really says Royal Mail. And then that was okay. Then Sasha came out, and what was the next thing I had to do? I'm not a boxing fan, but I read about this guy. I was living in Australia, and I read about this guy. He was the Australian featherweight champ in like 1870 or 1890. He goes to America, and at 21, he wins some fights, and at 56, he dies in Times Square on the pavement. How do you get from that to that? So I tried, the first thing was a true story, the treatment, it was optioned, nothing happened. So I said, well, now I'll just do fictionalize it. And that's how the Australian featherweight came about. And the difference between plays and novels, I found out, is you can't just leave it to the director. You can't just write dialogue. He said, she said, although we did Lee did one of my plays, and The Nightgown here, and did a reading of Jaime Moskowitz, but the novel is something, because no one else is involved. You are by yourself. You have to, first you've got to come up with the idea, then you have to come up with the words, then you have to come up with the exact words. And it's like I call it intellectual prison. Because
Intellectual what?
intellectual prison. Because once you get in, you're in. Getting in is, you'll do anything. That's when my house is the cleanest. Because I will clean anything not to sit down and write. And once you're down, you can't do anything else. And the noble thing, so that was that one. The noble thing, I had to write that story. It was Arthur Miller that said, what you write should be so close to the bone, so true, that when you read it back, you're actually embarrassed. I'm as embarrassed as hell with my stuff. I want to do it, I want to get it out. But Noble Thing came up, it's London and Lanzarote. I love the story. We're going to redo it as a sort of expand it, and that's going to happen a little later. Dancing. I did a short story 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and I did a reading of the short story at Altair Casting. Phil Newsom hosted that, and I don't remember if you were there, Lee, but I got good feedback. But what am I going to do with this short story? What am I going to do with this? It was called Where in the World is Mary Reynolds? And it actually, the names have changed, but it's become, it is part of this book.